Get 'em.
Welcome, folks. Y'all come on in and make yourself at home. This here, well, this is the Rolling Thunder Podcast, your home for all things Rolling Thunder. This episode is brought to you by Mossy Oak, because everything is better in Bottomland. Kent Cartridge, quality matters, performance counts. Shen Gear, waterfowl gear that is built better. And Benelli USA, dominate the skies.
Alrighty, welcome to this episode of the Rolling Thunder Podcast. Spence, it is about duck season.
Yeah, man. Doesn't it feel good outside?
Man, the weather's starting to shift. I mean, everybody's already kind of been there mentally, but now it kind of actually feels like it's here.
No doubt. And what about this studio that we're in?
Man, we are...
This feels awful fancy.
This is not the typical setup for the Rolling Thunder Podcast. We are in the belly of the DU headquarters today with a special guest. Spence, you want to go ahead and
so this is Mr. David Schuessler. Welcome to the show, Mr. David.
It is great to finally be on the show. And welcome to Ducks Unlimited.
Thank you. To get back here, you got to go through all the hallways, so we pretty much saw the whole thing.
Yeah, we keep it hidden. This is where the cool kids hang out.
There you go. Well, this is we're remarking on the microphones and the headsets. We've got headsets and microphones, but we don't have a cool table like this, and it's kind of inspiring. We need to find a spot in the shop that we can
up our game up.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, thank you for joining us. I understand you just got back from Texas.
From West
Stanfield.
Texas,
Okay.
yes.
How was the hunting, and how was the company? And
The company was fantastic.
awesome.
We were out there with the guys from Boss, the guys from Cedar Run Decoys, Dirty Duck Coffee. It was kind of an industry hunt.
And some of my Pacific Call friends.
Yes, and Pacific Calls.
Those
that's
guys
right.
are class acts. Alex and Trevor are really close friends of mine.
Yep, no, they were great. Had a great time. I got to sit with them every day.
Good.
And get to know them. It was fantastic. Food was great. The company was great. The camaraderie was great. But they've been dealing with the same warm temperatures that the rest of us in the South have. We shot geese, but they need this cold weather. They need this change and a push of fresh birds. And based on what we saw yesterday morning, I think they're getting it. And based on what I've picked up on the drive home last night, as well as some phone call this morning, everything's starting to fall into place. Finally, after this long wait.
Yeah, that's right. What are you hearing? Are you getting any duck reports?
I am. St. Louis picked up birds yesterday. Yesterday was a flight bird day for them. It is freezing up on the prairies, and I think it's going to freeze and not come out of freezing. Snow on the ground in the eastern North Dakota, South Dakota. Talked to a gentleman in Idaho last night that said they're losing their birds, and so which was. I told him, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
Man, that's tough.
Y'all can keep your Canada geese. I know you love to shoot them in January. But I heard speckle bellies and snow geese flying over Germantown, Tennessee.
We did this morning, too. We have a men's Bible study on Thursday morning, and my son and I were leaving to take him to school, and there were two big, probably 300 or more specks lost over Fayette County this morning.
I was getting the boat ready last night. It was about midnight. Specks flying over northwest Alabama. So something's afoot.
Yeah, and it's time, right?
That's right.
What excites me is the last 3 or 4 years we'd get this cold, but then you look 5 or 6 days out, up in Iowa and parts of South Dakota, and you go, well, it's going to warm right back up. I can't find anything above freezing up in that part of the world anywhere on any forecast.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in the winter solstice is a very important day for duck hunters in the South, because I think if we're going to get them and they're going to stick, we need to get them by the time that daylight change starts. So
that's a really good point. We've been wearing hoodies around the shop. We keep it really cold in the shop because my theory has always been if everybody goes and eats a big lunch and it's warm, I'm gonna have naps on my hands. So I keep it really cool, and everybody wears a hoodie most of the time. Today was the first day when I walked outside of my house that I actually needed the hoodie on that I've been wearing for a couple weeks.
Yeah, I actually underdressed. I was pumping gas on the way to work, and I thought, man, this vest isn't enough. I should have worn a coat this morning. So it's great, and it's time, and I'm excited.
That's right. Well, about this time every year, it's my understanding that you guys do this initiative called Into the Vault.
Into the Vault.
Is this an annual thing?
It's an annual thing. It's 5 years old. We
Okay.
started it during COVID.
Okay.
And during COVID, when the world shut down and we could not have in-person events, for the first time in DU's history, we started doing online auctions.
Okay.
And up until that time, we said, no, we're an in-person auction fundraising group. But desperate times, desperate measures. So we started doing online auctions, and that summer of 2020, Adam Putnam and myself were walking through our warehouse here, which I'd love to show y'all when we get done in the studio here. And he was looking at some old stuff we had up in the top of the rafters, and he said, "What is that?" And I said, "Those are all donations that came in through estates, and we have not had a chance yet to go through them and really take a look at this stuff and get it put out into the field to sell." And he said, "Well, don't you have online auctions now?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Sell it." And that was the birthplace of Into the Vault.
Wow.
And since that time, it is more from us selling items that had been donated back to Ducks Unlimited to us receiving merchandise from our chapters for items that had been donated back at a local level. And we still get estate donations here. And what it's become is the biggest auction we do on an annual basis.
That is wild.
Yeah.
So I'm going to derail the conversation for just a second. I never even thought about the fact that people in their estate would leave actual physical items, not just money, to a conservation organization.
I couldn't believe it either until I had to deal with it personally.
Okay.
And right now, our country's going through the biggest wealth transfer we'll ever see with the boomer
Sure.
generation that will be going on to a better place or going into a smaller house or an assisted living facility, downgrading.
Yep.
And that generation really collected. The
Yep.
generation above them didn't. They didn't have any money.
That's right.
Sure.
Well, that generation collected. And it was also for that generation is kind of when Ducks Unlimited exploded and really came to be what we are from an event fundraising perspective. So as you have this transfer of wealth, and some of it is not just money, it's items, the offspring will look at it and say, well, I want that, but I don't want the rest of this stuff, right?
Sure.
And I always thought, well, how would you give away all of your dad's Ducks Unlimited stuff? Well, it happened to me. My father moved into an assisted living facility because of problems with his leg, and it was time to go through his stuff. Now, I work for Ducks Unlimited, but I have a lot of DU stuff, and as he and I were talking about it, I said, Dad, I don't need any more prints. And he said, well, sell them. And so last year, a lot of the prints, and they were great stuff from the 80s that were Into the Vault, came from my father's wall.
Wow.
And this year, there's my father liked to collect knives.
Okay.
I kept the ones I wanted. The rest of them went into the vault. So I'm starting to see how that happens from a firsthand experience.
That is just wild. So you keep referring to the vault. Is there actually a physical vault here at headquarters?
Yes. Now, all of this stuff doesn't sit in it. But when they built this building in 1992, there is a room that I can't show you that it is a room, but it's also a vault with a special, locking door on
Wow.
it. And some of our most cherished paperwork from the incorporation of Ducks Unlimited, a lot of the jewelry that's donated,
Yeah.
and some original art actually sits in that.
Wow. So I'm
in
sure it's
that
a
room.
fireproof. I mean, it's a secure room.
yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's really actually pretty cool to know because, if you're a fan of this organization, you want to know that it's not just in a random file drawer somewhere.
Yeah, it's
or,
not in a closet.
And that's really neat.
Yeah. Now, but these 600 items didn't come out of there, but there is a room, and a lot of people don't know where it is. It's kind of hidden, and but it's neat to walk in there. There's some really, really neat stuff in there.
Is that where Bo Whoop is kept?
No, Bo Whoop is
In the lobby?
It's in the lobby, protected by lasers and special glass and everything else.
So you mentioned artwork and your dad's artwork. Artwork's always been a big part of DU functions and events. Do you include artwork in the end of the vault?
We do. It's firearms, decoys, artwork, collectibles, trips, a lot of vintage first of state stamp and prints, federal stamp and prints, jewelry, knives. It's 600 plus items every year, and there's some weird stuff in there. We not only get the old Ducks Unlimited stuff. Sometimes in these estates, we get stuff that has nothing to do with waterfowl hunting, nothing to do with DU, but it has value to it. There's a Star Wars figurine collection in the collectibles in this year's sale that came in through an estate gift, and I think it's all of the figurines from maybe the second movie. And as we took a look at the value of this thing, this thing's worth some money. Like we're going to be able to sell this and do some conservation work with it. And so let's put it on there. So it's not just guns and duck hunting. There's other stuff on there.
I'm an accountant, a very poor man's version of accountant, dangerous as a blue collar accountant. But so from a tax standpoint, an estate is donating something of value to Ducks Unlimited, and then Ducks Unlimited is turning around and selling that in an event like this for conservation efforts. Is that basically how
that is the perfect explanation of how it works.
And so an estate might actually choose to donate it instead of sell it because if an estate's at a close to those different taxable levels, I guess, then the kids can inherit the cash and not have a whole pile of stuff they have to pay taxes
on. That's right.
On.
A lot of different ways to cut up a pie.
Yeah, and it's a win-win. It's a win for the family, and it's a win for conservation in the long run.
Yeah,
so.
that's right.
So if somebody was looking for maybe a deal or potentially an investment, where should they be looking in the auction?
If you were looking to support Ducks Unlimited and purchase something that would have value through time, I would look in original artwork and I would look in the firearms section because I do not see value of those items going down much. Now, there's some sports collectibles in there. I think we have a Chiefs helmet that was signed by the entire team last year. So that might, if you like that type of stuff,
sure.
that might appreciate over time. So that's where I would look. If I had to buy one item and I wanted to take that item and I know it's going to appreciate and I know that I'm going to be able, if I ever needed to in the future, sell that item, I would look inside of original art. I would look at the Ralph McDonald, native Tennessean. We have a piece of his original art this year, or I'd look at the 1928 Parker or something like that.
Wow. That's just wild. So there's clearly, I'm stating something that's obvious, but that you've said that you've said a couple of times, but there's more than just the normal items that you would see at a DU event on the end of the vault auction.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
And 600 of them, lots of them.
600 plus. That staff, we have dedicated staff to this sale. This sale is such a impactful event for Ducks Unlimited. We have 2 dedicated staff, and all year long,
wow,
they work to just put this one sale on. That's because it's receiving the merchandise, it's categorizing, it's taking pictures, writing descriptions, figuring what the minimum bid's going to be.
How does delivery of all this stuff work? That's got to be administrative.
We've had U-Haul trucks show up that we know were coming with family attorneys that came down with the stuff.
I guess I meant when people purchase. Like if I buy the 1928 Parker, please don't tell my wife if I buy the 1928 Parker. Would I come here and physically get it?
We ship everything within 4 business days. So by the 12th of December, it all leaves this building. And right now, all of it's boxed up. And it's coded, and it's sitting in our warehouse ready to match a winning buyer's information, put it on there, ship it out.
Wow.
And the shipping is free, thanks to our friends at Dive Bomb Industries. Dive Bomb is sponsoring the sale this year.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yep.
Great, folks.
Yep.
I did not know that they
Cody
did.
Cody Stokes asked us, how can I help? And I said, Cody, this sale has gotten so big that I'm afraid we're going to have to start charging shipping. He said, no, you're not. He said, we'll cover it.
Huh.
Wow.
So thanks to Dive Bomb.
What a stand-up move.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
And along those lines, unlike a lot of online auctions people might go to, there are no fees. There's no shipping fees. There's no buyer fees. If you buy an item for $200, you're charged $200, and that's it.
Oh, wow.
And then it's insured, shipped out of here within 4 days, which is certainly plenty of time before Christmas.
Sure.
And it's a great program, and it's well oiled now that we're in our 5th year.
All right, so logistically, this sale starts on November the 27th?
It starts on the 25th, which
Okay,
I believe they call Cyber Monday now.
Okay.
The Monday before Thanksgiving.
Yep.
And we do it during that time of year because we do want people to have the opportunity to purchase some really neat Christmas gifts for people. So it opens on Monday the 25th, sometime mid-morning.
Okay.
And then it runs until Saturday, the evening of Saturday, December 7th. Unlike previous years, we have a sneak preview opportunity this year. So you can go to www.intothevault.org, and the site is up. You can't bid, but you can see everything that's on there right now.
So if you're on your way to Arkansas to duck hunt this weekend, or West Tennessee, or the Mississippi Delta, or wherever, well, I guess Mississippi's not open, but to Arkansas, Tennessee, Tennessee's not open either. If you're on your way to Arkansas to duck hunt, we don't recommend that you check your phone unless someone else is driving.
Yeah.
But you can take a sneak preview
When you're sitting
of
around
what's in
camp
the vault.
tonight
There you
safely, yeah.
One of the funnest things for me is Thanksgiving Day every year, and this has become a tradition in my family, is how many people are going to bid starting around 2 or 3 in the afternoon on Thanksgiving Day. And so we will purposefully, my wife and 2 sons, will eat a later Thanksgiving lunch, and we set up an iPad.
So you can watch.
And while we're eating,
That's cool.
because I get a notification every time there's a bid, and it's amazing the number of people that get through lunch and go, okay, it's time to go
They hit that
shopping.
mid-afternoon lull in
Yeah.
between the
Right.
football games, and they're
That's
tired.
exactly
Feet are
right.
propped up.
And we did it in about the 2nd year, and it became so fun. It's just our tradition now. And there's a lot of people, and it's amazing about on the following Saturday. It's about 9:30, and it just starts hitting. And I know it's people in tree stands. I know, right? They're on the morning sit, and it's
Sure.
like, okay, I've been focused for about 2 hours, 2.5, 3 hours, and then they start scrolling.
Isn't that funny?
It's time for that little mental break.
Yeah, no doubt. It's funny how the internet does that. Like, we don't think about the patterns that people live in, but we all are affected by the same things. And when we all like to do the same things, like deer hunt or duck hunt or whatever, we're all kind of in the same areas doing the same sort of things. And it's
Cool
that's
to watch.
That's a really cool tradition. I'm sure that for your family, the memory of getting through COVID with such a successful event like that, and what a trying time for nonprofit organizations. I mean, there's a lot of gratitude wrapped up in that, I'm sure. And that's a really special tradition.
All right. So just for my own curiosity, what's the most expensive item that's ever been sold through the Into the Vault auction?
Through Into the Vault auction was a David Moss original artwork in year 2, sold for $27,500.
Year 2 of
Into the
Into the Vault.
Into the Vault.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The most expensive item ever was a Pecan Island duck hunt at the 75th anniversary gala in Houston. I was there that night. And so it was $100,000, and it was you got somebody's private plane, a chef flew with you out of Houston. You flew over to Pecan Island. I believe it was a trip for 8.
Is this the Pecan Island on Mississippi River? Where is Pecan Island?
I'm sorry, it's
Pecan
in South Louisiana.
Gotcha. Okay.
And they sold one. The donor was there, and he was so excited for what it sold for. They went to the second bidder and said, "Will you buy it at the same price?" And they said yes. So
They
we
doubled down.
Yeah, so we sold 2 of them that night, 2 items, $200,000. So that's the DU record.
Sure.
The End of the Vault record was an original piece of David Moss artwork.
Man, that's super cool.
Are you going to top that this year?
I don't know of. Well, all it takes is 2, right?
Yeah.
But I would be surprised if that gets topped this year. That's getting way up there.
What will the Parker go for? What's your guess?
Everybody keeps asking me about the Parker. My guess is we'll get to 20,000 on it, and that's a really special gun. The Parker itself is certainly a fine shotgun, but this one in the 80s. So it's a 1928 Parker, and I think it was a G grade. It wasn't anything super special. But in the 80s, Frank Packmeyer, and if you ever have heard of Packmeyer grips, Frank Packmeyer was just a magnate in the firearms industry. He took a whole bunch of Parkers and had different engravers just put this ornate engraving on it with gold inlays and all of that. And the one that we were able to secure, we had no idea, but we later found out that Angelo B., who was one of the greatest firearm engravers ever, Angelo B., early in his career, did the engraving on this piece.
Wow.
And,
Okay.
And I got images to Angelo through his son Dom. Angelo said, that is without a doubt, yes, I remember doing this one, and now we have a letter of authenticity on this piece from Angelo that he did it. So,
Wow. That is amazing.
It is a striking piece.
The Parker is special to me because growing up, I read Gene Hill and The Old Man and the Boy, and The Old Man's Boy Grows Older, and there's so much talk about side-by-sides and Parkers and Upland. That's a really neat. Wish I was in a position to top the David Moss print.
if one
Purchase the Parker.
if one gets there this year, that would be the one.
So functionally, how does it work? Is it a auction like an eBay style auction, or what is it?
It is. We have a proxy bidding feature inside of it, so you can go on and you have to register, of course, to bid. But once you bid, if you're outbid, you get notified that, hey, you've been outbid. If you want to go back in, here's your link. But we have a proxy bidding feature, which means you could go through and say, here's my top bid.
Sure.
And you're not bidding that, but if you get outbid and it's still under your top one, it's going to rebid for you automatically.
You don't have to sit there and watch it religiously.
That's right.
Cool. That's great.
That's right.
What's your favorite item in this year's vault or in this year's collection?
It's probably that Parker. Yeah,
Okay.
it's probably the Parker. It's so special. It has, with that DU heritage that it has to it. I don't know if that's what I would want out of this year's sale, but I think that's the item I have the highest interest in watching would be that one.
Which, if there was an item that you were going to bid on that you could take home, what would it be?
One of the original Killins that we have. You know, Jim Killen passed last year. Is one of those waterfowl and especially dog artists that I sold as a regional director. I sold his artwork in my career, and with his passing last year, we have 2 of his originals. I would want one of those. And that's, I think, a little bit selfish just because of my career I've had with DU, but I would want one of those. Yeah.
That's a great transition point. Did you have another question you were going to ask about the vault?
I mean, kind of. It's
Go ahead.
vault adjacent. So you mentioned the Star Wars collectibles earlier. What's another weird or kind of non-DU thing that's popped up in these?
Through the years?
Sure.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, into the vault.
We had a signed Don Knotts picture, which, it came in, you're like, yeah, that's all right, put it in there.
Yeah.
Well, I think it got up to like $450 one year. So that one was kind of cool. I think for me, the neatest piece I've ever seen, we're all familiar with the 1959 King Buck federal duck stamp.
Yep.
Maynard Reese did that piece. It's the only federal duck stamp that ever featured a dog on it. Of course, it's a black lab named King Buck out of Nilo Farms, which is Olin spelled backwards. It was the Winchester Farms. And back then, the artist would reproduce themselves. They would schedule the artwork to be reproduced every time that a federal stamp came out. So there'd be a first edition, second edition, third edition, depending on how many they were selling. Maynard, so many editions were done of those, he did 50 colorized versions, which means he took the reproduction and he hand tinted each of the 50 that came out. Now, we had one of those the first year. We had a colorized version of King Buck, and it was cool. It was neat. It was kind of like an original. It did very well. Well, this massive estate came in from Nebraska 3 years ago, and we're going through it with the attorney. And then the regional director from Nebraska came down with all of it, and it was a ton of Maynard Reese art. And come to find out that the family had an incredibly close relationship with Maynard Reese. And all of a sudden, this thing comes on the table in front of me, and it's King Buck, but it's brown. It's a chocolate lab. And I looked at it, and my mind was kind of spinning. And so I asked the attorney, I said, what am I looking at? And he said, oh, well, this family had a chocolate lab that lived to be 15 or 16 years old, and the dog was such a part of the family. Later on in life, Maynard took King Buck and then did a chocolate lab hand tinting for the family.
That's too cool.
And there it was sitting here. So that's, I don't know if something can be most special, but that one kind of took
Deep
my breath.
roots.
Oh,
yeah, that one kind of took my breath away when we
incredible.
pulled that one out.
That's fantastic. All right, let me change gears for just a second. You made a reference a minute ago with regard to the artwork about your days as an RD. You're not an old guy, but you're also not a spring chicken. So I'm assuming you didn't start here yesterday. Tell to us about your career here at Ducks Unlimited.
So I'm 25 years in.
Okay.
I started as a regional director in Central North Carolina. I was a volunteer for the organization. I moved to Charlotte when I was finished with school, and was lamenting to my father one day about how lonely I was and I don't have any friends here. And I grew up in a DU family. My father was a volunteer, my uncles, and he said, you need to join the local DU committee because you'll find people just like yourself. So I did. Missed a meeting one night, so they made me area chairman.
Nice.
Missed another meeting. I became a district chairman and got that call one day, would you like to go to work? And I did. And so I started in North Carolina and have lived in Texas with the organization. Moved from North Carolina to Texas and then here to Memphis, but I have covered all the states, either as a regional director or a director of fundraising, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, New Mexico, all the way to Tennessee, south to the Gulf of Mexico. Took a little 2-year sabbatical and did marketing, and so it's been a wonderful 25 years.
That's fantastic.
It really has.
And what is your current job title and capacity around here?
I'm the chief of event fundraising. So everything that happens with events is my part of the organization, and then our youth and education initiatives also fall inside of that, our warehouse operations, our print shop. Not near as much fun as being a regional director, I can tell you that much.
You probably are at home more in the evening time.
A little bit.
bit.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of this organization, prior to the end of the vault and COVID, were there any real digital, web-based fundraising efforts that went on?
So, in my ignorance, and it was me, we started dabbling in online raffles where they were legal prior to COVID.
Okay.
And we had a couple of special meetings where we talked about this. And we were so worried about cannibalizing our in-person events. We were uber conservative in what we would do. So we had rules like the state of Mississippi was a state that could legally do it. And I remember Mississippi, and I think we told them they could do like 4 a year. We might do 4 a week right now because what COVID taught us was there was so much support out there and people who had either aged out of going to an event, lived in a sparsely populated area where we don't have a chapter, that we could side by side have this online business, component to what we do, as well as our in-person business, and we have found that they complement each other very well. Fast forward, coming out of COVID, we now have 10 dedicated staff that do nothing but online fundraising.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
There are so many cool stories of odd things like that the world learned during COVID, and that I didn't even consider that one myself. But that is such a cool thing because I would have totally supported that position if I'd have been in your shoes prior to COVID. I'd have said, no way are we going to cannibalize our event audience. But hearing you say that, I can think of 2 or 3 dozen people in my own family and close friend circles that I've invited to DU events a million times. They're not coming to
They're not coming to. They not
they
come to a banquet.
They don't want to be there. Yeah, and which is cool, right?
Sure.
Now, Jimbo Robinson would tell you that, and he tries to make me feel better about it. He'll say that, but maybe we weren't ready yet before COVID. That maybe there was a societal change during that time where we relied more on our phones and we're looking for more of that handheld entertainment.
Could be.
That's an
But,
interesting thought.
my dad is a perfect example, and my uncle, we just did a podcast with them. They were adult onset hunters that didn't grow up hunting. When I was a kid, they went to every DU event within, 30 miles of the house that they could get to. And it's an age, I think it's just an age thing. And now they're at a place where, like, I could probably twist their arm and get them to go to an event if I was hosting it.
Right.
But and they love the organization. They're going to support the organization, but they're probably not going to go to as many of the events as they did when they were 30.
The number of people, and I'll just find a buyer from an item, and I'll call them up and thank them and talk to them. So many that I've talked to has been, man, I really used to go to your events. I'm too old now, or something like that. And they love being able to support the organization, and they love the auction just because it's got so much cool stuff on it. But one day when I retire, I will tell the story of the day that I call it the day the world changed for Ducks Unlimited, and we had to make a decision when we finally realized that COVID was going to be more than 2 weeks. We decided, okay, we've got to build a platform. We have to start selling some of this merchandise, or we're going to be in a bad spot. So there was this one day that we turned our online auctions on, and I was in my kitchen. I got up real early, and I was pacing in the kitchen drinking coffee, and my wife came down, and she said, "What are you worried about?" I said, "This is either going to work or it's going to fail miserably." And so, we couldn't come into the office. I mean, right? We were all locked down at home, and all of a sudden, 9 o'clock in the morning hit, and I was hooked up into every auction across the country, and I think we ran 37 of them, because in New England, we would run 3 or 4 states together, and I just started seeing the bids hit, and I said, the world has changed for the better this morning. So it was a terrible time, but looking back on it, it was a cool time because it just made us think differently of how we have to go about doing what we do.
Yeah, there's definitely some good that came from it.
Yeah. I've often thought back about the quality of family time that I got during that little window of my kid's life. It kind of overlapped a duck season and then into the turkey season of 2020. Kind of started it, and then the summer, it was like a spring, summer, and then a winter. And I don't really want to have that happen again to our world, but there's a part of me that was like, man, life was a lot simpler in terms of family dynamic and the amount of time I got to spend with my kids.
Oh, I think we all got closer to that family we live with, no doubt.
Yeah, both my kids were COVID babies, and so we just had some time that a lot of folks don't get because everything was so much slower. So.
Yeah. All right, big picture.
Yep.
What is on your 1 year, 3 year, 5 year agenda or on your plate with regard to Ducks Unlimited?
I'm going to talk deep now.
Okay.
I'm going to get deep on this. And whether it's Ducks Unlimited, NWTF, whoever it may be, the whole industry, we have got to start thinking about how we influence the non-hunter. And I didn't say anti-hunter, the non-hunter. And I was having this conversation out at Stanfield's this week with some folks, and that I firmly believe in this this model of thinking that is coming out of some of the stuff the NRA is doing and Mark Duda is doing, is that our future, and especially our kids and our grandkids' future, their ability to pursue game in a manner that we're used to all comes down to how the non-hunting public views us. Not necessarily the non-hunting public turning into hunters, but they're supporting our right to go out and legally and ethically pursue game. And so for me, and I've got about 10 or 12 years left in my career, I want part of my focus to be making sure that people, when forced to go and vote, do you support hunters, that they vote yes? Because I think it all comes down to that 50-50. And when we get more people not supporting our right to do it, that there are some things that can happen to us that we've seen happen in other countries that we don't think can happen to us. But when you're in the minority, bad things happen on something being voted like that. So
I guess that group of people really is the majority, isn't it? I mean, hunters are kind of a group, and antis are a group, and there's probably a huge group in the middle.
Yeah, I think it's in the 80, like it's the percentage is in the mid 80s right now, if I'm not mistaken. Like if you polled all Americans, like 85% would say, absolutely, I support people's right to hunt and fish. Usually it's put together, right to hunt and fish. But it ticks down like a percentage every couple years, it seems like to me. And so as I watch that, and especially knowing more than the average person because of our so many of our youth programs falling up under what we do inside of events, I think that's what we have to focus on, is that non-hunter. And the things that we do with our DU trap program, we're supporting youth competitive shooting teams, both at the high school and the college level. The things we do with youth fishing teams at the high school and college level is to not only help those teams raise funds for what they do, but get out in their community and make people comfortable with the fact that they're competing with a shotgun. You know, that they're just as serious about their sport as a kid that suits up and puts a helmet on Friday nights. And a lot of them are the same. My oldest son was the same. Played football on Friday nights in the fall, shot on Saturday mornings in the spring in tournaments. But I need people to be just as non-hunters to support his right to go and compete with a shotgun like they wanted to go and cheer for he and his teammates on Friday night.
That's a really fresh perspective.
Yeah.
I hear tons of other peer organizations talking about, in my world, talking about educating the first-time hunters and trying to bring people in. But we forget about the fact that there's a lot of people that are never going to be converted to hunters, but we need them to support our cause.
Yeah.
And the first-time hunters are very important.
Yeah,
Absolutely, they're
you
important.
need both. It's not an
Incredibly
either or
important.
situation.
Yeah, but the becoming the not becoming the minority. We're already in the minority, right? But those that support us becoming a minority is what really scares me. And there's a lot of good stuff that hunting kind of forum group. Peter Churchborn is the gentleman's name that heads all of that up. And there's some great stuff that has come out of what they've done that you can find online that makes you think about how we need to talk to
How we're perceived.
non-hunters, not anti-hunters, but non-hunters about who we are and what we do and how important it is to us. And there's, so much of what we do with deer hunting is to control population. And so there's always that aspect that we can talk about, but sometimes it's hard for people to understand why we do what we do. We just need to put it in a positive light and talk about the family aspect of it and everything else.
Yeah. It's wonderful. Any other additional thoughts from you, Chris?
Man, I think we covered most of it.
Yeah, I've got a million thoughts running through my head, things that I want to ask you and continue to talk about. I really appreciate the perspective, and such encouraging to hear just how positive the Into the Vault campaign has been for you guys, especially coming out of COVID. What a great story, and what a great legacy, really, that this has been a transitional point 5 years ago for you guys and continue to be a launch point. So,
well, I've got a couple of questions for y'all. So we see this weather change, right?
Yep.
How do you think the rest of the year plays out? Have you looked at long-term forecasts?
I have not looked at long-term forecasts, and that's a personal confession. In college, I had a landscaping and lawn care company, and I just made a decision to quit looking at the weather.
Okay.
Because I felt like the weatherman was always wrong. And so I ended up working on days it was going to rain and not working on days it was sunny. That being said, I like how much November rain we've gotten. I like the river levels. And in my short lifetime, when I review back years that we started with full rivers and, dry summers and wet falls, those are some of the best hunting years that I can remember.
Yeah.
So I'm very optimistic.
Yeah, I've tried not to look at or trust too many long-term forecasts because I feel like they've done me wrong in the past. But I'm cautiously optimistic. I think we're at a better starting point than we have been in a while. And the reports, we got to go up north, and so some of what we've seen firsthand, but then also some conversations with folks that have been up there. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think we're looking okay.
To be honest, it doesn't matter. I'm just ready.
I'm going
regardless.
going.
Yeah.
Whether I'm in short sleeves or
Listen, boats hooked up, trucks loaded. We're going.
I'm going. I'm going. I think I agree. I think we're starting in a better point, especially with what's going on the prairies with the snow and the negative temperatures, negative zero, or negative numbers. Yeah. I'm excited.
Good. Well, hey, we had just recently had a pretty cool event in our shop that Gabe Baker put on. One of the things we talked about is what are the weird things that have been sold at a DU event. You need to make sure that in the recorded history of DU, you write down some of the weirder events. We hosted a $25,000 coon hunt at the same time that we hosted a bango gun event in the storefront. And so we had probably 50 highly competitive from all over the country, big money coon dogs and their handlers in hip boots and helmet lights, along with local Somerville folks eating a nice dinner and playing bango to try to win guns. And
I love it.
The
That's
coolest
fantastic.
collusion of micro niche, audience.
Yeah, what a weird
fantastic.
overlap.
More people need to experience true coon hunting with the helmet lights and everything else. I was very fortunate as a child that one of my friends every year for his birthday, a guy that worked for his father, took us on real, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Listen to them and put out the fire. They've got one treat and all of that. And it's
a whole subculture.
And it is some of the funnest hunting I've ever. Now, I was running around the woods when I was 14. I don't know if 54 I could get around and jump creeks and everything the same way we did back then. But that is awesome.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool, pretty interesting night of collusion of worlds.
That's great.
So.
Well, and thank you for hosting that event.
Oh, yeah.
And thank y'all for everything that you do for DU.
Well, it goes both ways, and it's a great partnership for us. And I know that you guys have big things ahead of you, and so we're honored to just be along for the ride. So thank you really for your time. I know that you've got a lot to do and a lot of responsibilities, especially here right ahead of duck season. So, man, we hope the Into the Vault campaign is the biggest and best one yet.
One last word on Into the Vault.
Yep.
If you bid, you're going to get an email from Dive Bomb with a 15 to 20% off coupon.
Very cool.
And you don't even have to win. All you have to do is bid. So go find you something cheap. You know you're going to get outbid, bid on it. Dive Bomb's going to take care of you.
Oh, look at there.
Good.
All right, and so by the time this episode airs, the sneak peek will be live, and then the actual auction will go live on Cyber Monday. What time does that kick off on the 25th?
It is 9 o'clock Central.
9 Central.
Yep. I believe that's right. If I'm wrong, check back at 10.
That's right.
All right, Cyber Monday, just be locked in and ready to go.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Mr. David. We appreciate your time and your input and everything that you guys have going at DU.
Well, thank y'all, and thank you for coming to One Waterfowl Way.
Absolutely. To all our listeners out there, we'll catch you on the next one.
Yep, be careful out there, and good luck hunting.
Yes, sir.
Are you ready to uncover the next hidden gem in the DU vault? The Ducks Unlimited Into the Vault auction, sponsored by Dive Bomb Industries, offers an extraordinary chance to claim rare and exclusive treasures. From unique, one-of-a-kind firearms to remarkable prints and never-before-seen relics, there's something for every collector. Visit www.intothevault.org today to preview what the vault has inside. Bidding opens November 27th. Mark your calendar and don't miss your chance to own a piece of history. Your next great find is just a bit away. And as always, we'll catch you on the next one.